Thank you for joining today's educational webinar of Manufacturing Committee at HIA-LI. Thank you very much. Today we'll be talking about fundamentals of cybersecurity for manufacturers. My name is Kevin Devecioglu. I am a co-chair of the committee, Manufacturing Committee, with my co-chair Ron Loveland from Summit Business Solutions Company. And as most of you know, we meet on monthly basis with manufacturers and service providers of Long Island in the business community. And we have various events. We have on-site meetings. And most of our meetings are designed to be educational, especially for manufacturers and also, of course, for business community. In addition to our monthly on-site meetings, we also have manufacturing best practices oriented site visits. We visit manufacturers and we learn about their best practices. So that's another type of activity that we do on monthly basis. And in recent months, as you know, we have been organizing webinars, educational webinars, to share even more information on monthly basis with manufacturers. So we are very happy with the audience and attention that we have been getting more and more every single month with our meetings, and we are looking forward to having more meetings in coming months, of course. So speaking of meetings, the next meeting is coming up on November 20th, and we'll be meeting at Markham in Melville, Long Island, and we'll be talking about New Year 2020. We'll be talking about new laws, what is coming in, especially from taxation point of view, and we'll be also have a panel of speakers. Will be talking about various subjects, taxation, as well as marketing, as well as best practices of manufacturing. So we'll have a pretty rich speaking opportunity for our panel, and we'll be able to learn from experts in order to get ready for 2020. So if we talk about today's webinar, we have also a great panel today. And we'll be talking about fundamentals of cybersecurity for manufacturers. As we all know, cybersecurity is a very important subject, and we'll be reading about almost every single day. And we like to learn more about it today from our panel. With us today, there is Rich Palacios from Connected Technology. Also, we have Michael Palma from Datto Company. So we'll be learning from experts about cybersecurity, especially for manufacturers. Today, as we all know, data is even more important than oil, and how we're going to protect our data, our systems in any condition. So we'll be talking about it today. And I'll be handing over to Rich first of all, and then we'll be also hearing about Michael as well. In terms of, as businesses, what we should be careful about cybersecurity, what kind of precautions we should take, and also how we should train our team members, our employees, our colleagues, and we'll be also have a chance to ask questions at the end in our Q&A session. Also, for your information, we keep the contact information on the screen right now, and when we have the Q&A session, we'll also put them on the screen. So if you like to continue this conversation, you can contact us, and we'll be happy to address your questions. Also, as a ground rule, please keep your microphones muted during the presentation. And if you have any questions, you can type your questions in the chat box, and we'll be addressing your questions during the Q&A session. Rich, are you ready to take over the screen?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Kevin.
Great. Let me make you the presenter, and then we'll be learning from you. Okay. Now you can take over the screen. Great. We can see your screen now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kevin. Able to see my screen, everybody?
Yes, that's perfect. So floor is yours, Rich. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Before I get started, I just want to thank Kevin. Thank you so much for putting this webinar together. Thank you, the HIA-LI and the National Manufacturing Committee, for giving us the opportunity to speak about cybersecurity, how important it is at this point in time, and also talk about our company, Connected Technology, and with our partner, Datto as well. So I'd just like to go right into the presentation and speak a little bit about Connected Technology. Connected Technology companies is established back in 1998. 1998 was, back in those days, or cybersecurity was the top of mind, but it wasn't as much as top of mind as it is now, and critical, and how it has changed. The value proposition that Connected Technology brings to the table is its expertise, and the fact of the matter that we have been involved in cybersecurity since those years. Now, as you and I both know, and everybody knows, cybersecurity is a major topic of conversation. It's happening in every vertical, specifically in the manufacturing vertical, and it's being talked about in all businesses and in the C-level and down to personal individuals having conversations every day in regards to how it's affecting it. Each one of us in business and in our own personal lives. Connected Technology itself, we have been focusing on 3 pillars, which are cybersecurity, business continuity and backup, and also compliance, which are helping our customers to maintain compliant. Aside from that, we also focus on general IT services, managed services that we help our customers with. And throughout the 21 years that we've been in business, we have been focusing on helping our customers secure, maintain their networks compliant, and protect their networks against cybercrime and ransomware and data breaches. And that's very important nowadays, specifically, as you and I both and all of us know, all the breaches that have been happening lately, all the ransomwares that have been happening in all the verticals, in business today. So it's extremely important to make sure that all our networks are secure, and we take every measure and baseline measures to make sure that those practices are being followed.
Hello, Rich.
Yes.
Thank you so much. That's great information.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, would you please make your screen full screen, the presentation?
Absolutely.
The PowerPoint. Thanks so much. That looks great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And just wanted to go into Connected Technology's value proposition. This is the areas that we bring to the table to our customers, and we specifically talk to them about it and bring them to the forefront. One of them is extremely important. The very first one, high quality and customer care. And what we mean by that is that we really take into consideration extremely important to make sure that our customers come first. Communication and understanding of what we do for our customers is extremely important. So we do, starting from the very beginning as a network assessment, where we go in and talk to people in regards to the network. We make sure that every step of the way is communicated and understood and explained to them from the beginning, the fundamentals of what cybersecurity is. And before I continue, I just want to make sure that all of us who are listening know what cybersecurity is, and this is what this webinar is about. Cybersecurity is the practice of protecting our systems and networks. And we protect them from digital attacks, and these cyber attacks that come about are aimed to access, change, and destroy our personal and data information from our businesses. But what the end result is money being extorted from users, from businesses, and interrupting normal business practices and processes. So cybersecurity, again, that's exactly what it is and what we portray and make understand individuals that and business owners that it's extremely important to make sure your networks are protected. Next that we focus on is really establishing those processes and procedures around security. So following through it, making sure that we're providing particular tools and services that will protect your network, your endpoints, talking about servers, talking about workstations, your computer, everything that's tied into and that's working off the internet we make sure that it has a connection to the World Wide Web. We make sure that it is protected, and there is no absolute way that, or we make sure that there's protection there. I make sure that we avoid every pitfall possible. All of our in-house technicians, our support staff is part of Connected Technology. Nothing is outsourced. We focus heavily on response time. Our response times are leading in the industry. So that is very important for us, that when an incident happens, that it's reported, that we acknowledge it, we are able to mediate it, we're able to respond to it, and more importantly, we're able to communicate that to the customer. So that's extremely important to us. Being part of Cisco and Microsoft as an industry leadership and strategic partnerships with them, along with that as well, which we get into a little bit further, is extremely important for us. And other industry leader partnerships that we get involved with, and we follow, and we create those partnerships to make sure that we're bringing our customers top-notch service. Again, we've been in the business for over 21 years, and that just brings a lot of experience to the table, a lot of knowledge within the healthcare, the legal, financial, manufacturing, education, and nonprofit fields. Also, we basically touch every vertical there's out there. So nowadays, there's no vertical left behind. And the systems and tools that we use are specific to each business. There's not a cookie cutter specific tool that we provide to our customers. Every single assessment that we do, and every single conversation, every single meeting that we have, it's regarding cybersecurity. We make sure that it's in the best interest of the customer and the business. Our technicians are something that we're very proud of, and extremely highly trained technicians with industry recognized certifications. We have within our organization, certified ethical hackers. While on the right team, on the blue side, right, certified information systems security professionals, business continuity and disaster recovery professionals, and the list goes on. So we focus very heavily on providing the customer with expertise and train engineers and technicians that will know exactly what is happening in their networks. We recognize any type of malicious events, and we'll be able to react to it quickly. And again, that's something that we're very, very focused on, and we're proud of to have on our side. We have also made extreme amounts of company investments, back in security to keep our clients safe. We make sure that we provide different types of areas where the customer will benefit and keep secure, such as password vaults, documentation management systems, multi-factor authentication, dual authentication, and ticketing management systems that are all based on timing, and more importantly, providing accurate information for the customers. So that's Connected Technologies' value proposition. I'd like to just move into a little bit into our more specific to our services and what we provide our customers with. And the first area I want to just touch base is our managed services, which we call Connected Care. Now, it's compromised in different areas for the customers, but again, we start off on the baseline level, and then from that point on, we start to get to know the customer's network, and then we're able to provide a higher level of security as needed. So our stand is to always be protected, have those tools and services that are going to protect your network, but more importantly, have the people behind it that know exactly what they're doing. So my next slide is to just talk about a little bit about our managed services and the different areas that we focus on. I'll start off right from the top. System monitoring. It's very, very specific to what it says. We're monitoring all our systems within a network. We focus on securing it, and more importantly, we have individuals who are monitoring these networks, the traffic 24/7. We make sure that there is any incidents that happen, any alerts, that we respond to them very quickly. And by the time something does happen, where it's outside business hours, by the time you walk into your office, you will not only not know exactly what happened, because we would take care of it, but we would make you aware and have that conversation within that day to let you know exactly what went on and how we were able to remediate that. We focus heavily on update and upgrade systems, and more importantly, software as well. One of the largest projects that we've been doing with this past year has been a migration from Windows 7 to Windows 10. So not only have we been speaking to our customers about how important security patching is within Windows framework, but we have actively been upgrading our customers, moving them from the platform from Windows 7 to Windows 10. And again, all based on security, all based on knowledge and recognition, and making sure that all the systems and the networks are protected. Backup and recovery is a very specific and very, very important aspect of cybersecurity. Backup and recovery is something that we focus on also very heavily. Datto is one of our partners that we've been working with for so many years. And the reason why we work with them is because of their product and their knowledge. They're specific to backup and recovery. And nowadays, it's not just about backing up your information to your local server or to the cloud. Now it's about business continuity. Now, business continuity falls into recovering when an incident happens. How quickly you're going to recover, how fast you're going to recover, how quickly you're going to get your business up to line if an incident does happen back in business. Just a quick story. We're familiar with Arizona Ice-T. Arizona Ice-T is a manufacturer of iced tea beverages here on Long Island. Unfortunately, they suffer a cyber attack. One of the major reasons why there was so much loss, not only monetarily but in their productivity, was because they were not properly backed up. If they were, they would have been back in business right away. Would have been able to spin up a virtual machine and depending on the setup that they have, and been able to be back in business within a few hours. So very important. Change management is also very, very specific to cybersecurity. Any changes that happen within the network, software, we're making sure we're on top of it. A lot of our customers, thanks us for making sure that we're able to recommend or help them out with many different changes that happen within that network. So it's also very critical. Systems management as well. All your systems that tie into your network, whether it's your specific network and your servers, or anything that is tied in that's virtually a private network that comes in from the outside, all those systems have to be managed. And we take very specific avenues, and we take specific tools to make sure that all those systems are protected and they're managed in a certain way. Maintenance service is also another part that ties into that management of systems. Those systems need to be serviced. They need to be updated. There's some changes that come about. There's some patching that has to be done, or they have to be moved into a different area, and we make sure that we take care of that for our customers. The help desk has been extremely important for certain customers that can utilize that particular level of service, and we also provide that for them, whether it's ticketing or maintaining their entire network. Our help desk, we can take over and supply that for them as well. And the last part I'll speak about is administrative support. We're also very, very proactive in that area, in communicating and either becoming a sole avenue for the customer in supporting the administration within their network, or we can be an add-on to them. So all these areas I just spoke about make up our managed services. And then again, it's extremely important to keep on top of these moving parts. As you know, the cybersecurity is not just one entity, and it has taken a life of its own recently due to the volatility and the activity that has been going on, not only here in the U.S., but worldwide. So that will, let me move on to my next slide here. I'd like to introduce Mike Palma, Channel Development Manager for Datto, business continuity and backup partner for Connected Technology. And Mike, I'll turn it over to you. And
all right,
where you go from there.
All right, so I just become the presenter. It's not allowing me to become the presenter right now.
I can help you with that.
All right, thank you, Kevin. As that's going on, yeah, screen 2. All right, perfect. Everybody see it? Everybody good?
Great.
Yeah, all right, so right. So as Rich mentioned, Mike DePalma, Channel Development Manager with Datto. I essentially cover all of North America. My role is a little bit unique in that I'm not part of the sales team at all. I basically just go around. I do webinars like this. I've sat on seminars with folks from the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, kind of gathering a lot of information that we could bring back to our think tank of folks, but also to educate the small business community, the managed services community, and really anyone that really needs more information about this. And really it is becoming an epidemic, particularly if you're following the news. Ransomware has become the leading kind of attack that we're seeing at the small business level. And it's happening everywhere, every different industry. I know a lot of times, especially at the small business level, you feel like, hey, this isn't going to happen to me. They're only going after the big companies, the municipalities, but study after study has shown that actually the attackers are going after the small business community at a higher rate. I always say it's like, you could have two different business models. You could be the home run hitter and swing for the fences and try to get that, Fortune 500 company to pay you 6-7 figures, or you could be the singles hitter that's going to go out and try to attack thousands of small businesses every single day, knowing that they're going to get a certain percentage of them, and the small businesses are more apt to pay. So we're seeing them really in every different type of industry. We're seeing it especially on the manufacturing side of things, where downtime really becomes costly. The downtime side of this is much more costly than the actual payment. And there's several examples of that throughout every industry, but you will always find, and it'll be a common theme here, that the cost of the downtime far, far exceeds the cost of any ransom payment. So the ideal way to kind of combat this is to make sure that you can keep your business up and running. But I do want to take a quick step back, because there are some misconceptions about ransomware, which allows the small business community to fall into this lull of security, saying they're not going to attack me. Now, ransomware, all they're doing is they're encrypting your files. They're not stealing your data. And that's why when folks say, hey, I'm a small business, what do they care about my data? The truth is, these ransomware criminals, they don't care about your data. They don't care what it is. They just know that regardless of the type of business you're in, the size of the business you're in, you can't operate without access to your data. So it allows them to cast this huge net that can capture those Fortune 500 companies and banks and universities, all the way down to the one-man nonprofit who can't operate without access to his data. So all they're doing is they're encrypting your files, and then they're going to say, okay, you pay me some ransom and I'll give you the encryption key and give it back to you. And that's why it's such a successful piece. And I've been given ransomware specific presentations for years now, 3, 4, 5 years. And 4 or 5 years ago, I'd be given a presentation, you look out in the audience and people are looking at their phones. Maybe there's a couple head nods, but it was something that really wasn't impacting them. Now, as the years went on, we've seen more and more actual examples where either that business in the audience has been hit, they've got a client or a vendor that was hit. So now it's really becoming something that is on the front page of a lot of newspapers, and it really came to a head back in May of 2017. This is when ransomware really made the worldwide news. And that's when we had an attack called WannaCry. You might remember it. It was the largest single virus attack we'd ever seen. 220,000 networks were impacted around the world. 150 countries were impacted. And what was a little bit unique about this virus was normally what they try to do is they try to gather some information about the company they're attacking. They do a little reconnaissance and they'll say, okay, this is a large company. I'll know exactly how much to ask for. With this particular virus, although the scale was so huge, they only asked for $300 across the board. They didn't care if you were that large company or the small company. It was only $300 across the board. So what was interesting was they only netted about $300,000. That's what the FBI has estimated, which is really a small amount. About $1 billion changed hands last year alone just because of ransomware attacks between the business community and these criminals. So $300,000 is very small. So I could tell you that in the IT community, we figured this was just phase one of a two-phase attack, right? We figured, okay, the first phase was, let's see how many of these systems we can encrypt. And then the second phase is going to be, all right, now we know this thing works. Let's figure out how to monetize it. And so that's what we were all preparing for. So a couple weeks after this WannaCry attack, at the end of May, I was doing a presentation. I was in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and the keynote was a gentleman from the FBI, actually the head of cybersecurity for the Philadelphia office. And I got to go first, so I got to hope all my stats and figures are right so I don't get embarrassed by this FBI agent, but that all went okay. And I finished with the WannaCry attacks, hot button topic of the day, and I explained that theory, the two-phase theory. And the FBI agent comes up and he's telling some really scary stories. He's talking about cyber warfare and hacktivism and all these things. And he finishes with ransomware. And he says, you know, we actually have two theories. One is exactly what Michael just explained. We're preparing for that second phase here at the FBI as well. We're trying to figure out what vulnerabilities were exploited. We're trying to figure out how we can educate the community for that second phase. But then they had a second theory, which at the time was very far-fetched in my mind. And I've done a million of these presentations. I'd never heard anything like this. But as the months went on, I think there was a lot of validity to it. The second theory said that their real intention was not to collect those ransom payments. That $300,000 they made was just gravy. The real goal of this attack was to be that front story on every website, the lead story on every newspaper. They wanted to make this worldwide news to scare the business community. And why were they doing that? Well, they wanted to increase the cost of Bitcoin. Now, you might be familiar with Bitcoin, an online anonymous cryptocurrency. It's been in the news, especially over the last couple of years. But the criminals have been really exploiting this anonymity for years. Ransomware has actually been around for 30 years, but really we started seeing the uptick in around 2013 when they realized they could marry this very easy delivery system, which normally comes through an email with an attachment or a hyperlink, and they could marry that with Bitcoin so that they're not asking you for your credit card, they're not asking you for an ACH payment because they know that that might get tracked back to them. They're asking you to pay in Bitcoin 99% of the time. So they had been accumulating Bitcoin for years and years by the millions when a Bitcoin was $50 or $100. And as you could see on this chart, it was pretty stagnant since its inception. It opened up in 2016 at just over $440. Opened up 2017 at still under $1,000. And then you see that first spike. And you see when it is. It's in June of 2017, a month after that WannaCry attack. Because what was happening? What was happening was the entire business community was listening to us experts telling them that phase two was coming. So they were putting all these solutions in place to protect their networks, but they knew their last line of defense was to have this Bitcoin on hand, especially if you're a large company. Because it's not like you walk into your Wells Fargo and say, hey, I need $250,000 in Bitcoin. You've got to go set up an account. You've got to find an exchange. You've got to fund that account. I could tell you firsthand that at Datto, there's 4 people on my team that do the traveling all over the world for this. And finance department gave us $100 in Bitcoin because we talk about it. Now we could speak intelligently about it and all the rest. So I went, set up my account. They said the money was on the way. It took 6 days for that, just $100 to get to my account. By the time it got there, it was worth $87. So these businesses wanted to be prepared, so they started buying up Bitcoin. And then like anything else, the markets followed. And we saw that crazy Q4 bonanza. If you remember back in Q4 of 2017, it actually peaked at close to $20,000. And it's still sitting in the $8,600 range. This slide I created over the weekend. So it's still much higher. And so you would read the stories about the 20-year-old kid who bought some Bitcoin when he was 16 and now he's a millionaire, or the savvy investor who did the same thing. And those are feel-good stories, right? It's that lottery winner type story. But the reality was the folks that were making tens of millions of dollars every single day during that crazy spike in Q4 were the criminals who had been collecting this Bitcoin by the millions when, again, those Bitcoins were only worth $50, $100. And so whether this theory was right or wrong, the reality is those are the folks that made money. And there's a theory that now that sell-off, that drop, was them just cashing out and cashing in their money. And so what this illustrates is, A, the sophistication of these guys. These guys are 2-3 steps ahead of us in terms of their forward thinking. This is actually what organized crime has shifted to. It's no longer the guy in his basement doing his little hacks so he doesn't have to get a real job. This is what organized crime has shifted to here in the States, out in China and Europe and in Russia and all the rest, because there's so much money to be made with so little risk of getting caught. And that same FBI agent actually said, they encourage you not to pay the ransom for the obvious reasons, right? You're going to put a bigger bullseye on your back. You're going to embolden these guys. But beyond that, he actually said you run the risk of being in violation of the law, because a lot of the folks that are behind these attacks are terrorist organizations or terrorist states. So if you are paying them, you're now funding a terrorist organization, and you are now in violation of the law. So this just shows you what we're up against. And I mentioned the $1 billion number, right? That's the number that actually changed hands. The actual impact to the business community was closer to $75 billion. Now, again, I mentioned the cost of downtime. This number includes those ripple effects, the cost of downtime, the cost of data loss. PricewaterhouseCoopers put out a study last year that said a small business that was down for a week or more had a 71% chance of closing its doors within 12 months. Beyond the cybersecurity, FEMA put out a study this year that said a small business that's shut down due to a disaster has a 60% chance of never reopening its doors. So that downtime is clearly costly. So when you look at the pieces of leverage that these guys have, and I could sit here and acronym you to death, obviously being in technology, but the two acronyms that are very important to this conversation are your RPO and your RTO, and every business should be able to answer these two questions. RPO is your recovery point objective. That's super simple. How much data are you at risk of losing at any given day, right? Any given time? Is it hourly? Basically, it comes down to how often you're taking your backups, right? Most people can answer this question. They say, okay, I take it hourly. That's aggressive enough for me. I could absorb losing an hour's worth of data or a day's worth of data. And everybody listening into this webinar has a different RPO goal, and that's fine. But if that was the only piece of leverage these criminals have, okay, I encrypted your data, and they said, okay, well, I'm not going to lose my data because I'm backing it up, not a lot of people would pay. The reason why people pay is the other side of the screen, the RTO, your recovery time objective. It's great you're backing up your data. How long is it going to take you to get that data back into a production environment where you can get your business back up and running? Most folks cannot answer that question. And the criminals are putting you in a spot to say, okay, pay me $3,000 in ransom, or go ahead and recover your data. Using a cloud backup, try to bring several terabytes of data down from the cloud and come call me in 2 weeks. Now, the cost of being down for a week or two is going to far exceed that $3,000. Business folks are going to do the math, and they're going to say, okay, I have to pay this because it's a much cheaper way. And I mentioned the easy delivery system. How are these folks getting in? I was doing a presentation up in Manhattan earlier this year, and again, there's a gentleman from the FBI there, and he's given, again, one of those scary FBI presentations. And then in the middle of it, he shows a picture of this house, and he says, anybody recognize this house? Now, there's about 200 people in this room, and from the back of the room, somebody says, that's my house. He says, this is a beautiful house, sir, and you just got a promotion at work the other day, right? Congratulations. Now he starts rattling off all these figures about this guy. Now he's got the whole room's attention, right? He says, I bet you think I used all the tools at my disposal at the FBI to gather this information, right? Nope, not at all. All I did was I talked to the organizer of this event, and I got a registration list ahead of time, and I picked one of you at random, and all I had was your name and the company you worked for. So the first thing I did was I found you on LinkedIn, and now I knew what your face looked like, right? So then that's where I was able to look you up on Facebook, got this beautiful picture of your house, found out you got a promotion because you were talking about it, everybody's congratulating you. I looked for you on Twitter and Instagram, and within 5 minutes, I had a good sense of who you were. So if I'm a criminal, I'm going to go right after the low-hanging fruit. Now, the guy in the audience went to Penn State. That's a great university. I also know it has one of the best alumni associations, the largest alumni associations in the world. Probably get emails from them all the time, right? Well, what I'm going to do if I'm a criminal is I'm going to send out an email with the same template, the same look and feel. The subject line is going to look like it's coming from the Alumni Association. Within that email, there's going to be a hyperlink. It's going to say, click here to download all the information you need on your 25th reunion festivities, whatever it was. And you're going to click on it because it looks like every other email in your inbox. When you hear the phrase socially engineered spear phishing attack, this is what they're talking about. We all give so much information so freely to everyone on the internet. The criminals are using that against us, and they're going to say, okay, so say that didn't work. Well, the criminal's going to just go down the list and say, okay, I got all your coworkers here on LinkedIn. I'm going to create a dummy account that looks like it's coming from your boss or potentially somebody in finance. And eventually, I'm going to catch you on a Friday afternoon when you're trying to clean up your emails before you go home for the weekend, and I'm going to catch you asleep at the wheel, and you're going to click on it. I'm going to infect your network. And oh, by the way, the best time I can infect you is on a Friday afternoon. Chances are you don't have anybody monitoring your network over the weekend, and now I've been able to get access to everything over the course of the weekend. Now, again, I keep talking about the sophistication of these guys, and it's really the way that crime has shifted in the world over the last 50 years. I mean, you might have heard the story last year, you may not have, but actually the greatest casino heist of all time happened last year. And we think casino heists, we think the cool Hollywood movies, guys sneaking through the elevator shafts and all these things and wearing disguises. That's all cool for the movies, but that's not how crime is committed anymore. You don't see as many bank robberies where there's a team of folks in ski masks. It's easier to do it in the cyber world. So what these criminals were able to do at this casino was they were able to infiltrate the casino's network through the internet-connected fish tank thermometer in the casino. We hear about Internet of Things. Everything's connected. They discovered a vulnerability there. It wasn't protected. They were able to access the financial systems from there, and from there they were able to get all the financial and personal information from the high rollers that gambled at that casino. This is information that's worth tens of millions of dollars or more on the dark web, because it's really just an exchange. What these criminals would do is they'd go down to the dark web, and it's almost like an exchange, like eBay, and they'd say, okay, I've got a 54-year-old male, here's his social security number, here's the company he works for, here's how much money he's got, I'll sell this information to you for $10,000 or whatever it's going to be. And then the next layer is going to be, okay, the first person that exploits it. It really is a corporate structure. And again, this is how crime is being committed. And I mentioned the fact that every industry is vulnerable. We do at Data, we do a ransomware survey every year for the last 3 years, and the numbers are pretty much similar. But as you could see on the screen, I mean, the industry that's being attacked the most is the construction and manufacturing industry, followed by professional services. And we are seeing an uptick in government and education, and that's what's making the news. But as you could see from the statistics, it actually still is towards the bottom of the list. They're going after the folks that can't absorb the downtime. And they're going after the folks that typically haven't made the investments and put those systems in place to protect their networks. And again, within this survey, it's very clear. We only interviewed at the small business level. Average ransomware payment was only $4,300. That's not enough to break the bank. The average cost of the downtime was $46,000. Now that might be enough to break the bank. Beyond the fact that the ripple effects of the reputation to your company, and maybe folks get disgruntled and they leave. We've seen examples of that as well. And so I do presentations to all different types of industries. I always kind of look at some of the national organizations, see what their tips are as far as cybersecurity. I was able to find some on the manufacturing side of things. Some of these are pretty straightforward, right? Make sure your operating system software is up to date. That's a no-brainer. But I will tell you that WannaCry was able to penetrate because folks weren't doing those updates, and they were on antiquated systems that hadn't been patched and hadn't been downloaded, those updates. Easy stuff is multi-factor authentication, making sure that it's harder to get into your systems. I mean, you've probably, if you're doing banking, you have that, but we've got it across the board here at Data. It's super easy and inexpensive to do, but it makes it so much harder for these criminals to get in. Training, number one thing you can do. I can tell you that right off the top of the head. It's easy, it's inexpensive, but it should be an ongoing process. It shouldn't just be part of the onboarding process. Okay, here's our cybersecurity training. It should be ongoing, at least quarterly, just a refresher, so that we've all been there. We've all sat through seminars, and then for the next week you're super diligent, and then it fades away, and then you forgot all about it. It needs to be ongoing. Clearly backing up your critical files is on there. This kind of goes without saying. There's very few folks I talk to that aren't backing up their files. But ultimately, I think what's extremely important is developing a cyber attack recovery plan. Document it. Have it printed out. Make sure that everybody in your office knows what to do if you are attacked. Everybody knows if the fire alarm were to go off, where to go, right? I could tell you at my previous job before I was in this space, if I saw the scary red screen that says I was impacted by ransomware, do I want to walk down the hall and tell my boss, hey, I think I just infected our networks because I was lazy and clicked on the wrong attachment? Probably not. I'm going to spend some time trying to figure it out by myself. I'm going to call my buddy down the hall. He's going to come over and try to help me out. You have to have a plan in place where everybody knows, well, I got to pick up the phone. I have to call this. How do I isolate my machine? What are these next steps? That is critical. And again, it just takes a little time up front, but once it's in place, it's a living document, so it might change as the landscape changes. But everyone should have this in place. This is your business you're talking about. You have to have that kind of recovery plan. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Rich. I know you've got some things to add about that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's extremely important, and everything you said, it just makes a lot of sense. And we really do hope that everybody who's listening really hits home and starts really reacting to making their network safer. That's it. That's the most important thing that we need to. And my apologies here. Get back to where we were. Sorry about that. So talking about backup in disaster recovery, one of the most important aspects of pillars of cybersecurity, because at the end of the day, the way things are going, the way statistics are being talked about, all these different attacks coming our way. It's not a fact of the matter if it's going to happen to me. It's just a matter it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time, and you have to be prepared. The most important thing in cybersecurity, aside from the other areas that we talked about, again, a lot of moving parts, a lot of different things have to come into play. The baseline areas that you have to have in place to be compliant, to secure your network, backup and disaster is there for you the right way if something does happen, if you have to recover your information. Data care is our product that we focus on as far as backup and business continuity. So just to give you just a quick example, a little bit of information, a couple of blurbs of exactly what business continuity, a true business continuity and backup is all about. As I mentioned earlier before, it's not about just saving your information on your server that's in your house or in your business or a very low limited a cloud-based backup. Now we're talking about we have to be prepared and go to the next level, and that's where we are. We have to be prepared, and that's the mindset that we have to put ourselves as business owners. We have to put ourselves in that situation. We have to think about it's going to happen to us, and with just like any type of insurance or anything that happens in your home, you're secure, you have an alarm, but with your business, we have to be prepared. So data care is our product that we provide to our customers, focusing on business continuity and data backup. Some of the benefits are very important, and I'll just go over a few briefly. End-to-end business continuity, and that is meaning your entire network, all your files, or your data, your information. And of course, we talk to our customers depending on how they, what's important to them and where we're going to store that, how we're going to access it. We put a plan together when something does happen, and unfortunately, if it does, you much rather be prepared than not. Backing up your data every week, every day, those days are over. Backing up your data every minute, every 5 minutes, every hour, and at the end of the day, do a full backup, restore it to the cloud, and do a hybrid combination. That's exactly what you need. Restoring your entire service in minutes and hours and days is extremely critical. Again, both local and cloud for data recovery is highly recommended. Mitigation for compliance and regulatory concerns. If you adhere to those bodies, HIPAA, PCI, DFS, whatever the case might be, whatever vertical you're in, wherever it falls into, you're going to have to follow some regulatory rules that are being imposed, and they will become more strict as time goes on. And then we're seeing it now more and so as we're receiving from our own customers questionnaires asking us, how do we do this? How do we put this together? So what we do is we put a plan together, black and white, in color, and explain exactly how you would recover if there's a breach. And not only that, but it will also be if you're audited, you will have that in front of you. And those are the things they ask from you as a business to adhere to those regulatory bodies. And that's all managed entirely by connected technology. That's exactly what we focus on and what we do for our customers. Another aspect, another area that's also very important and part of our services and solutions, and obviously we've been talking about is cybersecurity. It's called cyber-care. Now that falls into the areas that Mike just spoke about and I've been speaking about throughout this webinar. And that is one of the biggest important things that we've been talking about is awareness and training. By far, that is the number one way of how a network can be infected by an employee or a person who doesn't have the right knowledge, clicking on the wrong link and infecting your entire network. Definitely not, you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be that company, because what happens after that is it's hard to recover, right? There's expenses that come from that point on. There's downtime. The most important thing is to be aware. Be conscious. Know exactly what you're doing. Don't go to Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks. Open up your laptop and start looking at your banking account. Because trust me, you and I, there's people out there in that parking lot scanning the area to see who is vulnerable and what door they can open to get in to just steal data. The dark web. Multi-factor authentication, extremely important. If you are the person who are accessing your information, we have to make sure. Multi-factor authentication or dual authentication will provide that. Penetration testing is very important for organizations to test those systems, those people, the individuals, to make sure that they're doing the right thing and they're following procedures. Annual risk assessment, also very important. It gives you a holistic view of your entire network and compiled in the past year what was good and what was bad, and then we work on the bad and we improve on the good. Another internal vulnerability monitoring. That's extremely important. Alerting and monitoring to identify and notify you when things happen are critical to the way we work and the way we do our business. So those are things that cannot go unnoticed. You have to be vetted. You have to be tied up and understand and be tied to your network, understand your network in and out. CM and Security Operations Center Incident Response. SIM is just a different level of protection. That's really more on the side of 24/7, 365, having individuals looking at your traffic, building logs, historical views. They will alert you. We'll let you know. They will act upon things before you even know about it, and we'll communicate that information to you. So cyber care is extremely important, not only for the enterprise, but also for the small business and mid-market as well. And we can customize that for the specific customer. So that we're talking about. I think this will go back to you, Mike.
Yeah, I'll take it over from here, and we'll get things kind of wrapped up. I know we're running a little bit of time, and I do want to have some time to answer questions here. So Rich mentioned us talking about business continuity. What does that mean? It's continuous of operations, right? So how do you do that effectively? Because there's a lot of ways that your systems can go down beyond just cybersecurity. It could be a server failure. It could be a storm that we talked about, right? Maybe we get another Sandy up here. So what does that mean? And what does a complete business continuity solution mean? Well, you do want to have it as a hybrid approach where it is important to have that off-site, but you also want to have an on-site as well. Just an example, at Data, we've got 2 data centers. They're on opposite sides of the country. It's the only reason we selected Allentown, Pennsylvania, and Salt Lake City is because, hey, we want to make sure that regardless of what's going on around you, you've got the ability to recover your data. You want to make it automated. User error is the cause of 91% of data loss. And it's normally not malicious. It's not somebody going in and intentionally, stealing data. Most of the time, it's the example I gave before, somebody clicking on the wrong email, the wrong attachment, somewhere along the way. So to take as much user error out of it is extremely important. Do you have somebody manually taking your backups? Do you have somebody manually testing those backups? You want to be able to set that schedule, like Rich mentioned, to say how often do you need to back it up, and then say, okay, now it's all automated. And you want to automatically test those backups, both locally, and if you do have a hybrid solution, make sure that that off-site sync is being tested as well. So now you've got multiple layers of testing so that if a backup fails, right, nothing is perfect, you can be proactive about it. Or if you're working with Rich and his team can be proactive about it. Now, backup has also evolved, just like every other technology you use right now. I mean, think about what you used 10, 15 years ago as compared to today. One of the things that criminals are exploiting is the fact that backup happens to be one of those things that folks do not upgrade, where it's typically still done at the file and folder level, where you're telling a device, okay, back up this file in that folder. Now, the way backup is done and the way that all business continuity solutions are done is that they're an image-based backup, meaning you're actually taking a snapshot of that entire server, not just the files and folders, the operating system, the applications. Everything that lives on there is mirrored to an on-premise device and then subsequently sent off to those data centers. And what it allows you to do is set up that schedule that we just looked at, right? Say you're setting it up hourly. And what happens is every one of those backup points are now independent of one another. They're not layered upon previous backups like antiquated backup solutions are. So if you are hit with ransomware, you could take that time machine, say you're hit at 11 o'clock, you can go back to the 10 o'clock backup and know that there's no risk of that being impacted. Right, that takes away a lot of the leverage these criminals have. At a maximum, you're going to lose an hour's worth of data in that respect. And that's a maximum. It could be much less than that. But ultimately, what image-based backups allow you to do is it gives you the virtualization capabilities. And this really is what business continuity is. And what this means is, here's your server, you get that scary red screen on your laptop saying, hey, or on your desktop saying, hey, you've just been infected with ransomware, pay me my money. Since everything that lived on that server lives on that on-premise business continuity device, you could actually spin up what's called a virtual machine directly from this on-premise device. Meaning everyone in your office is going to be operating business as usual. Everybody that was operating off of that server is just going to be failed over to this, so that most folks in the office wouldn't even know that was the case. And so now it's business as usual. It's a production environment. You're taking backups while you're in this state. And it really allows you to take that second piece of leverage. Forget about starting the restoration, however long that's going to take. The first thing and foremost, I talked about the disaster recovery plan, is let's get everybody back to work. Let's get everybody back up and running. And then we'll figure out, maybe do some forensics on that device and figure out what happened. Maybe it was more than just a ransomware attack. Maybe there's some data that was impacted or stolen. You'll have time to do that because you could be in this virtualized state for hours, days, weeks while you're figuring that out. And then when you're ready, you start what's called a bare metal restore process to get all that data, including the changes that were made in this state, over to that new piece of hardware. So now you've closed the gap on the front end, but also on the back end as well, taking away their leverage, right? Reducing the downtime. This is critical. This is how you combat these folks. You're going to be able to answer your RTO and RPO questions. The one thing I hope that everybody that is listening in this webinar can do is go back, spend some time, and figure out if you could answer those questions. For the most part, people feel comfortable at the RPO side. The RTO side is a question that most people cannot answer. They've never done a full disaster recovery quest. And then additionally, try to figure out what that value is. If I'm down for a day, what does that cost me, right? Figuring that out. And then with these virtualization capabilities, you want to have the ability to do it locally, but maybe we do have one of those superstorms and that on-premise device is compromised as well. You have to be able to do it from the offsite as well. And you want to be testing those virtualization capabilities. So ultimately, you want to take away the lost data portion, but also that downtime. That's what business continuity, the stuff that Rich was talking about, really applies to. And so I'm going to there's only one slide here, Rich, so you could probably just take over. I won't give over the controls. But in terms of the O365 and the cloud stuff, you want to jump into that a little bit?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'll just go over here and just talk briefly about our cloud care services. Talks about exactly what it says: cloud care, cloud software. Nowadays, we see a lot of our customers migrating from different mail to Office 365, and we help them from that process and that migration. So just to talk about a couple of different things you all are familiar with who are on the webinar. So Office 365, we do that for very specific reasons. Security, always on top of mind. Always on top of mind, making sure that Microsoft provides a very secure platform. But you have to know how to manage it, and you have to know exactly where that security goes up to, and then you have connected technology provide those aspects further on. Again, talking about Office 365 migration, we help our customers just migrate their entire, inventory of email from files that they've had in the past, all saved files, bring them together, put them into Office 365, and offer that level of security for them. We also provide hosted voice over IP phone systems. We've done it before. We do it all the time with our customers, day in and day out. We're very heavily involved with Cisco, not only because of their security, but also their performance. And we actually install, implement, and deploy the systems. And also at the end, Cloud Care is also focusing on SAS Protection, how to recover quickly from data loss or within, 365, or even if you're not involved in that particular version of email, G Suite associated with, accidental malicious deletion, different departments, external hacking, ransomware attacks. So it's very easy to use, it's automated, and is both secure for application and the infrastructure level as well.
Great. And I think, Rich, it's important that last note about the SAS protection, because again, people get lulled into this false sense of security that, hey, I moved to O365 G Suite, I don't have to worry about backing up anymore. But studies have shown 1 in 3 of these companies have lost data or have experienced at least some sort of downtime and didn't have access to their data over the last 12 months. And if you look at your user agreement with Microsoft or G Suite, they essentially both have what's called the shared responsibility model, which means they will provide the security of their cloud, so of the cloud itself. But the tenant, you, provide the security in the cloud. So they're not going to guarantee any of that data. Most of the time it's deleted data, and they will say they'll store it for 30 days. Again, none of that's guaranteed. They will talk about how many seats you have, and additionally to that, go ahead and call Microsoft's tech support and let me know when you get a ticket created and all the rest, right? It could be a long time. They put it right in their SLA in talking about data deletion and retention. They have no liability. They cannot guarantee you're able to recover your data. This came from their old one, and actually I pulled this also from their forums, where they recommend your backups are kept in an external storage. They now deleted that. It's no longer there where they're recommending that piece, but I could tell you I did a presentation up at Microsoft's headquarters in Burlington, Massachusetts, and they explicitly on this panel talked about the shared responsibility model. Same goes for G Suite. They're going to have the same type of thing. So ultimately, I'll close. We talked about ransomware. There is a new virus out there called Ransom Cloud, where they are targeting O365 at this point specifically. There's a guy you can Google, Kevin Mitnick. He was actually at one point on the FBI's most wanted list, the most famous hacker in the world. He got caught, went to jail, came out. It was like a catch me if you can type thing. He started working for the good side. We had him at our big DattoCon convention, and he stood on stage with 2 laptops and showed a Ransom Cloud virus that he created. And he said, okay, this is how it looks. And the email comes in, looks pretty legit, Anti-Spam Pro, looks like every other email you would have gotten from Microsoft. All I need you to do here is just click here and accept. And once you do that, every single email, not just on your system, but in the entire domain is now encrypted. And the only email you could open is the pretty red screen that says, hey, pay me my money. Pay me my money, because that's the only way you're going to unencrypt this entire domain. So that's what we're up against. Hopefully you didn't get too scared. I know we didn't leave too much time for questions, but if anybody does have any, there's a chat box up there. If not, feel free to reach out to Rich or myself for more information. I don't know, Rich, do you have any parting thoughts?
And I thank you very much, Mike, for following up on that, on the Office 365. Extremely important as far as backup is concerned, business continuity. But the one thing I will say in closing is that hopefully everybody who is listening to this webinar today really takes to note and really takes to heart that cybersecurity is extremely important for every business, every vertical. Like I mentioned early in the webinar, there's no vertical left behind. Specifically now with manufacturing, service industries, they're being targeted, they're being hit hard, and the expenses are extremely huge, big. And trust me when I tell you, when you prepare yourself and you are purchasing into a model that fits your business and you're protecting yourself, it outweighs much more and much better than what's going to happen if you're not protected. So let's change the mindset and really start moving forward and taking that next step to protect ourselves, and more importantly, to be aware and recognize those pitfalls.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Michael. That's it's been pretty educational for our listeners. I'm sure for manufacturers, it's also very important to know about the recent trends in cybersecurity. Also, what is going on in terms of in the market, and also we learn a lot. Much appreciated. Thank you so much. So let's take a look at our questions. What kind of questions that we get? I get some of them in the chat box, and I like to share those with you if you can address. So one of the questions that I got is it so costly for small and mid-sized companies to defend ourselves against hackers? I think it's a pretty good question. We keep reading about hacked companies, for example, in the paper, in different papers. For example, most of them are big companies, large companies. So in terms of small and mid-sized companies, is it really costly for them to defend themselves, take precautions against hackers or other malicious products or activities in the market?
You know, that's a great question, Kevin, and I'll answer that, because we see it day in and day out in our business, and we get that question a lot as well. And the answer is no. It really is not. When you compare to what is happening out there to businesses day in and day out. We belong to feeds that we see all the organizations, you know, within the U.S. and internationally getting hacked and what they're paying. Some companies are most paying a ransomware. It's an astronomical amount of money. Lately, not only, like I said, with the manufacturing vertical, but also with municipalities and school districts here on Long Island are paying, you know, over 100,000, 200,000 ups and above, close to $1 million, in not only ransomware, but in getting back to losing productivity and hardware and that cost. The answer is no. If you prepare yourself correctly, if you set yourself up right, and you talk to a company such as Connected Technology, and we advise you and we talk to you, we have a conversation back and forth and really set those perimeters for you, at least a baseline. We're not talking about putting a SOC or a SIM level of security, which could happen if you choose to. It all depends on what your business requires, what your business needs are. But again, the question is no. It really outweighs the price of protecting yourself, outweighs the price of paying when you are vulnerable and hacked.
Thank you, Rich. Another question is, how do I get infected with ransomware?
You want me to jump in, Rich, or we both can kind of tag team that one?
Sure. Sure.
For the most part, it is going to come in a phishing email, and it's going to be a lot of people say just opening the email, but it's normally you're going to download an executable file. It's going to come in as an attachment. That's why we actually see HR representatives as one of the big targets, because they're getting resumes like all the time from people that they don't know. So that's a big target. We'll see sales folks the last day of the month get, hey, can you please process this invoice? They're trying to hit their number, and you click on that, or there's a hyperlink. Now, there are some where it's actually an infected website. We've seen some on Facebook and things like that where, you know, people click on, you know, a website they shouldn't, and then actually that website is infected. Again, some of the very easy things, if you just scroll over any email you get, just scroll over the from field, because you can make that, and I could make anything say Mike Palma, but if you go and actually scroll over it and you see what that actual email address is, and it's something crazy, say you get something from PayPal, and then it's, instead of being at paypal.com, it's at a million different letters and numbers.com, you know that's probably not right. Same thing with the hyperlinks within those emails. Just scroll over. Take the 2 seconds to do it. If it doesn't look like an email, a website that you're supposed to be doing, then don't click on it. Same if you get the pop-ups for, hey, you got to update your Adobe. Go to Adobe's website and see if there's a new update available. Take a little bit of time to do that. But that's normally how they're getting through. Rich, is that what you're seeing as well?
Absolutely. I mean, you hit it right on the head. We're seeing that day in and day out. And the numbers are just becoming elevated to the point where, you know, it's affecting, you know, all businesses. And it brings me back to the point where we're talking about employee training. It's something that we provide here at Connected Technology, and we offer it to our customers. As a matter of fact, that we are right now being part of Cybersecurity Month and members of the HIA. We are offering, you know, employee training for free. And also dark web monitoring, which is another area to really be focused on and really be aware. So it all comes back to not being knowledgeable, being aware, making sure you take the time to look at certain things, and through that training and through that process that is continuous, it'll sink in. It'll eventually become second nature to you, and you'll be surprised how many people we talk in and day out, telling us their networks are secure, they have everything covered, backup is covered, we have a great backup. And when we start doing our investigation, we start doing our assessment, we start uncovering all these different areas that are not up to par. Even the baseline, even the beginning stages of the foundation to build up a security posture, it's truly not there. And that's unfortunate. And that's where we spend a lot of our time, is communicating to our customers, making sure that exactly what Mike said, just take your time, be aware, don't do things that, you know, they used to do in the past, because the world that we live in nowadays has changed dramatically. All the attacks have become extremely volatile. They're coming in different directions. We're talking about even mobile ransomware coming through your phone, through downloading apps. So we have to change the way we do things. We have to slow it down and really take a focus on what we do to protect ourselves and our businesses.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Also, for our attendees, for our listeners, we keep our contact information on the screen right now. So after this webinar, if you'd like to continue this conversation, if you have more questions, please feel free to contact us. Another question, I know we are running out of time, so I'll also try to keep it short as much as we can. So what should a company do to prevent ransomware attack? I think that's we already covered this one, I believe. So we talked about this. The education is very important. Trainings are very important. We talk about the emails that we shouldn't open up and attachments. If a company is breached or a victim of a ransomware, how do they recover?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Again, we see that day in and day out. Unfortunately, if you do have a great backup and continuity business plan, you're not going to go through that because you're gonna be back in business and avoid that. But if that does happen, it's really hard to come back from an attack. We just experienced a major issue here, an attack with Quest Diagnostics, which is a local company here in Long Island, and they didn't experience it themselves. It was through a business partner that they dealt with, their credit card processing company. They were attacked, and because they were attached to them directly through the system, Quest Diagnostics got infected. Point being is that they went out of business. American Credit Corporation, I think was the name of the company. And that's how serious this is. It can cripple a company. It can close and shut your doors down. So the point to that question is it's very hard to come back. It will take a lot of time and money to come back from an attack. So my point is to be prepared and be aware and be protected so that doesn't happen to you. And we can certainly talk about how we can protect your company, those steps that you take to make sure you have these policies and tools in place, and not only throw them at you. In other words, here they are. This is what you do with them. No, meaning that you're going to have somebody dedicated to look after your network, to look after your systems, to look after every device, every peripheral that you have within your organization, to make sure that it's always protected, it's always being looked at 24/7, 365. Because again, that is the world that we live in now. We have to get to that point and change our mindsets that we have to understand, and more importantly, take that next step to get to that level. So it's hard to come back from an attack.
Thank you, Rich. We have another question about Office 365. I think Mike addressed those because I think it's a common misconception in a way that we always think that Office 365 has some sort of a backup with our data. Apparently, it's very limited. So that is an important point, that also we need to get our own backup, even though if we use Office 365, even though that's on cloud, we are responsible for our own data and its own backup. I think, am I correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah,
absolutely. And as you saw in Mike's presentation there, Microsoft only goes so far, right? And it's up to us. It's our responsibility as the tenant or as the purchaser of this software, especially nowadays, to properly back up your emails, which contain sensitive data, personal information, financial information, important information of your company, whatever the case might be. So that area is very specific because we all communicate via email nowadays. We use different methods of email. Office 365 is one, and G Suite is another. But point is that it needs to be protected beyond the level of your thought that Microsoft is going to do it for you. As you saw on the slides, Mike, and you can talk a little further into that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of, there is no reason for somebody not to be backing up their data in that SaaS world. The criminals are going to find a way to get into it no matter where it lives. And it's still, we're seeing most of these attacks on the on-premise stuff. That's just because there's so much low-hanging fruit there. They will follow the data wherever it goes. So the shift to the cloud is not going to protect you in and of itself. And so when you look at, again, the user agreements and things within O365 and G Suite, we use G Suite. It's a great, product. It's nothing, I'm not disparaging it at all. But just like anything else, you do need that second form of backup because it will be difficult for you to recover. It won't be there. There's certain limitations in terms of, like I said, seat size and length of time. And if something's been encrypting that, to get that back, again, is going to be so critical when you're looking at timing.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Rich. Okay, great. I think it looks like our time is up, and I appreciate your educational presentation and addressing questions. Do you have any final remarks before we end the webinar?
I just want to thank everybody for listening in. My email address is there if you have any questions specifically or you want a copy of the deck, anything like that. But I want to thank everybody for their time and to you, Kevin, for allowing us to come on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin, for putting this together. Thank you to the HIA Manufacturing International Trade Committee. Mike, thank you very much for your input. Greatly appreciated. And my information is there. If anybody ever has a question in regards to cybersecurity or how we can help your organization, please contact myself on Connector Technology, whether by phone, email. We'll be happy to talk to you. And please take advantage of our free employee training and free dark web monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the end of our educational webinar about fundamentals of cybersecurity for manufacturers. Thank you very much, Rich. Thank you very much, Michael. It's been a great, very educational webinar. Much appreciated. And while we are under our webinar, I'd like to also remind you our coming monthly meeting on November 20th. Please register. And we'll be holding the meeting at Markham in Melville, New York. So please remember this. And we'll be talking about 2020, what to be careful about when we are getting ready for the new year, and what are the new laws and regulations coming for manufacturers and business community, and how we should be preparing for the new year. I would like to thank you for your time and looking forward to meeting you in our coming webinars and coming on-site meetings. Thank you very much and have a nice day.